welcome to the tutorial for the Balcombe dress. I'm going to start out doing a bit of stay stitching. So here we go, these are my yokes. As you'll see, I've got a pair of each. So there's 2 backs there and 2 fronts here. And 1 pair I have interfaced, I think you can see. So I'm just going to look at the non-interface. There you go, you can see the difference. So I'm getting rid of the ones that are interfaced, and I'm just going to put a stay stitch around the neckline so that it doesn't distort while I'm sewing. So here we go. You can do this to the other set that are interfaced as well if you want, but the interfacing usually gives it a little bit of something so that it stops it stretching. I'm going to just do a quick stitch within the centimetre seam allowance so I don't have to unpick it or anything. And you'll see I'm just sort of guiding it through with my hand behind the sewing foot rather than in front, so I'm not pulling it or anything. I'm literally just letting it run through so that it doesn't change in any way. I don't distort it. And there we go. So that's a stay stitch. Just a regular sewing stitch around the edge. So now we're going to stitch the shoulders. This is the bit that I've stay stitched, so this is the one without the interfacing. I'm just going to lay them together, matching up those shoulder lines there. Pop a couple of pins in. And then I'm going to stitch using my 1 centimetre seam allowance, which is the seam allowance that's throughout unless otherwise specified. A quick back tack. Back tack to finish as well. There we go. So that's my outer yoke, the one that hasn't got the interfacing on. And I'm just going to press these seams open. There we go, nicely pressed. So that's our outer yoke. Now you just need to do the same for the interfaced yoke. So next I'm going to stitch around this neckline. So there's one of my yokes. And I'm going to lay the other one on top, right sides together. I'm starting off with the square bit of the neckline here, but I'm going to match these shoulder seams before I start pinning anything else so that I know those match perfectly. So that's both shoulders matching. Now I'm going to lay this side of the neck flat as much as I can and match these raw edges together. Because you've got your stay stitching in, there shouldn't be any stretch in there. So I'm just making sure that is all lying beautifully flat. Then I'm going to do the back neck. That all lies nicely together. So I've pinned everything together. The next thing I'm going to do, this is useful for beginners. I'm just going to mark my centimetre seam allowance just at the corners. This takes any guesswork out of knowing how far to stitch down and before you do your pivot and turn for your nice corner, and it just gives you nice, even, accurate corners, and it'll make your neckline look so much better if you're a bit unsure about the centimetre seam allowances. So I'm marking this in felt tip. Obviously don't do that, to use chalk or a graphite pencil, but this is to show up for you guys. So there you go, you can see I've just got that little corner bit, it's just a couple of centimetres either way, so that I can follow that as a guide when I come to do those corners and get them really nice and crisp and square. And I've marked that on the interfaced side as well, because that's going to be the inside of my dress. So if by any chance it did show, it will be on the inside anyway. There we go, I've got down to the corner and I'm just going to pivot and then carry on along the front, nice straight edge, until I get to that next corner and a pivot and round. So there we go. You can see there my stitching was nice and accurate on the line, and I'm just going to snip into the corners now right up to the stitching. Incidentally, you can always reinforce your corners and stitch them more than once if you wanted to. You can stitch them again on a slightly smaller stitch just where the I marked it with a felt tip, just that little bit. I'm going to leave mine at just 1 stitch line for today for the demo. So let's understitch this neckline now, because this always gives it a really lovely professional finish. Here we go. So this is my interfacing side on the top that you can see, and I'm going to trim that down to half. So this bit with the interfacing on, I'm just going to trim it away all the way around to about 5mm. And then when I finish trimming, I'm going to just clip around the curved bits of the neckline. The straight bits should be fine. So you don't need to clip that front neck straight area, just the curvy bits. I'm going to snip in every centimetre or two. Just give it some ease when I understitch. So now I'm folding over the interfaced section. I'm leaving that seam allowance to the right there, and I'm folding the interfacing side over it, and I'm going to stitch the seam allowance to the interfaced yoke. I'm going to just start by doing, there you go, that's what it looks like on the other side. I'm going to just start by doing that straight line that goes across your chest at the front. So I'm just starting in the corner, and I'm just going to work right across to the other corner and then do a little back tack and stop. I think this way gives you a nice crisp corner. You can go all the way around in one if you choose to, that's up to you. So there you go, I'm just coming off, my machine cuts the threads, so I'm just going to start again, making sure my seam allowance is tucked underneath my interfaced yoke. There we go, just pulling it through and stitch all around. So that's what it should look like, stitched as close to the edge as you can. And then we're just going to put one inside the other. And then give it a press, making sure that facing doesn't show on the right side. So it's rolled just like that, as close to the edge as you can without it showing. There we go, nicely pressed. That's your yoke done. Next little job, we're just going to prep these casings. And all you need to do for them, that you can see that's my back channel. I'm going to just open it up and fold over the seam allowance, the centimetre each side on the long edge, and give it a press so that when I come to stitch it on, it's all ready. There we go, nice quick job. So now we're going to mark where this casing needs to be stitched on to your dress bodice. There's my casing. I've got my pattern over my fabric. I'm just making sure the fabric's absolutely level and in the right place. And then I'm going to fold back the pattern and find the casing line that's right for my size. And fold the pattern over like this. And then I'm going to use my chalk to mark the line. I'm using blue chalk so that hopefully it shows up for you nicely. So that's one side marked. You can just about see that. Now you could just then fold it over and give it a press and use an ironing mark as a line for it, but I'm going to just pop another chalk line on the other side just to show you again. So level it all up, make sure it's all in the right place, and I'm going to use that fold line that I just made, just checking it's in the right place, yeah, and mark my line again. There we go. So let's just make that a little bit darker, and then you just lay your casing along it. So this is obviously all on the wrong side of the fabric. You can put your casing on the right side of the fabric if you choose. I'm showing you on the wrong side today. So we just line the top of the casing up with that line we've drawn. So that's the top line of the casing, the top of your waistline. Incidentally, You may want to lower it if you're longer in the body, but we're just following the lines today. Same principles. So now I'm just going to stitch right on the edge, following that blue chalk line on the edge of my casing. Here we go, just a regular stitch. So that's one edge of my casing stitched down. And then you need, if you want to do the 3 layers of elastic, you'll need 2 more stitch lines within that casing, and obviously a stitch line on the other end holding the other edge of the casing down. So it works out to be sort of 1.3 centimetres or something. But you'll probably want to mark it on with your chalk again, just to give you a guide. I'm doing mine by eye. Or you could just stitch the casing down both sides and then just put a wide bit of elastic in, just one piece, it's up to you. There we go. That's our casing. Job done. So now we've got this lovely casing. I've got 3 pieces of elastic. I've basically popped a safety pin on each end, a big safety pin, and then I'm going to attach a little safety pin to the other ends. And I found the length of my elastic by measuring my waist, dividing it by 2 and adding 2 centimetres, and then I cut 3 lengths of that. So that's sort of half my waist plus my seam allowances. And I don't have any flashy bodkins and all these wonderful elastic threaders that some people have. I just have standard safety pins. So I discovered this is the quickest way. Just do them all at once. So you can push them all through. Just easier than trying to get them through once it's all ruckled up with 1 or 2 layers of the elastic. So I'm just going to push these through all in one go. Like I said before, you can use just the one piece of elastic. You could use a 3.5 centimetre wide or 3 centimetre wide, just one piece. That would work too. But the perfect one would be an 8mm elastic for this job. So I'm just transferring all those elastics onto one safety pin so they don't ping right through again. They're all secured at one end or at both ends. And I'm just going to give them a big pull now just to kind of even out those gathers, and I'll give it a little steam in a minute as well. But just to give you an idea of how it looks, there we go, it looks really pretty now, it's all gathered up. So the next job is just to secure those elastics down. Once you've threaded them all through and given it a little steam, I'm just going to take out this safety pin and pop a few pins in just to stop them disappearing. But I'm going to line up the end of that elastic with the edge of the fabric. That's it. Otherwise it will be too tight if the elastics are too far away. And then I'm just going to stitch over all of those backwards and forwards a couple of times just to secure them, doing it within the centimetre seam allowance. So again, you don't want to see that on your dress when you finished it, just keep it within the seam. There we go, another little simple job just to keep those in place when you do your side seams. Okay, let's put some gathering threads in these bodices at the top. We know that's the top because it's got the armholes in it. So we're going to fold this over and find the centre, because that's going to line up. There we go, got a little notch in there. That's going to line up with the centre of my yoke. And I'm going to do my gathering threads. I'm going to do the first one 1 centimetre from the raw edge and the second one halfway between the raw edge and the first stitch line, so around 5mm. I use quite a long stitch for this, between 4 and 5 on my machine. My machine automatically does a back tack, so you don't need to do it for this, but that's just what my machine does. So there we go. Right, so you can see your 2 rows of gathers there, and you can see also there's a little notch there, just a couple of centimetres in from the armhole, and there's one on the other side. That's just an area that you want to keep flat. You don't want to gather that bit because it would look a bit unsightly under your arm. So now I'm going to stitch these yokes together around the outside, just on a big stitch, just to hold them so they act like one piece of fabric. There are many ways to do yokes, and I thought about all the different ways that I could show you with construction, and I just felt this was the simplest, most straightforward way for beginners. So if you prefer to stitch to the outer yoke and then hand stitch, or if you want to bag out and turn through shoulders and things, obviously you do you, that's absolutely fine. But I think this way is pretty foolproof for any beginners out there. Just to literally stitch your 2 yokes together. Now you've bagged your neckline out, just match the raw edges and the seams, keep it nice and flat, and just stitch them together around the outside edge. There we go. So that should now just behave as one piece of fabric. So let's do this gathering now. Here's my yoke. Do check which part of the bodice you have. They are different on the armholes, so I'm doing my front bodice to my front yoke. I'm just finding the centre of it there, little snip. So I want the right side of my yoke. So that's not the bit with the understitching on, this is the bit that looks nice and clean and flat. And I'm putting right sides to right sides. Can't find my notch in the centre there. I'll just do that again quickly. So I'm just going to fold this in half too, pop a little snip in it, and match that to the centre of my yoke. So I know I've got an even amount of fabric in both sides. There we go. Pop a pin in there. Then I'm going to find the edges. So there we go. Remember that little notch we've got there, haven't we? So that first bit needs to be flat up until the notch, so no gathers. So I can put a pin in there, knowing that's exactly as it should be. And then I'm going to do the same on the other side. Lay that first little bit down flat, so I don't get any nasty gathers into my armholes and get tucks and things in there. And then I just need to make those the same length, so I need to gather up. I need to snip these threads because my machine does its little back tuck at the beginning, and I'm going to pull those up so that the gathers end up being the same length as the yoke. There we go, pull them both up at the same time. Until I've got, it's a little bit tight, so I shall just move those gathers down. I shall titivate those as I stitch them as well, but I need to get them roughly the same length. So that fits nicely to the yoke now. A couple more pins. There we go, that's the first half. And then I just do the same to the other half. Pull up these threads, both threads at the same time by the same amount. Even out the gathers a little bit. And then pop some pins in. There we go, nice and flat. So I'm going to stitch this on that first stitch gather line, the one that's a centimetre away. There we go, back tack to start and then straight across. Obviously I'll be fiddling with these gathers a little bit to make sure they're nice and even as I go. Okay, so there's my seam line. So the yoke's nice and flat and it's got those lovely gathers. Oh, it looks so pretty now. And I've still got that little flat bit there, so I won't get any gathers caught into my armholes when I'm putting the sleeves on. I'm going to give that a little press and I'm going to overlock this seam. There we go, that looks better, doesn't it? So I'll show you the overlocking. You could top stitch it as well if you wanted to. It looks nice and neat. Okay, let's do these side seams now. Looking like a dress now, isn't it? So we just need to turn it through, right sides together, starting at your underarm, pop a pin in, match your casings up at the side and try and flatten out any sort of elasticy gathers for that first little bit so that you don't lose any of the elastic, and then pin all the way down the sides. You could put side vent in actually, that would be nice, wouldn't it? You could do that on both sides. You'd need to overlock your side seams separately, but here we go. Centimetre seam allowance again, we're just going to go all the way down. I might do a little extra back tack over the elastics again just for safety, but you probably don't need to if you've secured them. There we go, and then all the way down to the hem. So there you go, one side seam, and I'm just going to overlock this. Obviously if you wanted to do your vents you'd overlock it separately, but that looks nice and neat now. So do the same for the other side seam. Going to give that a press. There we go. Okay, so we've got sleeves now. Here's your sleeve piece. Remember you need a pair, so you need, that's the back with 2 notches. That denotes the back of the sleeve. There's 1 notch for the front and there should be a single notch on the sleeve head. There it is, which matches up with your shoulder. So you need a pair, so make sure you've got the pair and not 2 left sleeves. Right sides together, match your underarm seam, give it a quick stitch, and I'm going to overlock mine. Then you just want to turn it through and give it a press. There we go. So now we're ready for the sleeve insertion, but I'm just going to show you this before we start. If you're a beginner, you can put a little stitch line just over the sleeve head, that big humpy bit, 1 centimetre in from the edge. Oh, that's my machine, it's back tacked at the beginning again. There we go. And you just pull it up ever so slightly. Don't gather it. But if you have any troubles or you're worried about getting your sleeve heads into your armhole, this way it just eases it in for you. Look, you can see there, it's a little bit frilly, but it's not gathered. It's literally just eased. So it's already starting to get smaller, so it will go into your sleeve head much more easily when you come to stitch it in. So give it a try if you're a beginner. Okay, so we're going to put this sleeve into the armhole now. So there's my double notch. So that's the back of my sleeve. So I know that there is my right sleeve. So I'm going to go in through the neckline, grab the seams, the underarm seams, and pin those together. So now I've got the right sleeve in the right armhole in the right way round. So right sides together. Matching those seams up. Get those bits of overlocking out the way as well, little straggly bits. And then I'm going to find that top notch that matches to my shoulder seam. There it is. And where's my shoulder seam? It's in here somewhere. There it is. So I'm going to pin that to there. And then I know I've got the right amount of fabric that I need to distribute to each side of my armhole, and then starting under the arm I will start pinning. Obviously if you've got your little stay stitch, your little gather stitch in the top, or your easing stitch I should say, because you don't want it to gather, you can pull that up ever so slightly until it fits. It should fit nice and snugly inside your armhole. So I'm stitching now, starting from the underarm seam. I'm stitching a centimetre seam allowance again, readjusting mine because I don't use pins. Here we go, just easing it in as I go. And stick to your centimetre seam allowance if you can, because it should fit in beautifully. The more accurate you can be with your sewing, the better the finish in the long run. Okay, so that's stitched in. As you can see, it's all lying nice and flat inside there. I'm just going to finish it off with an overlocker now. It does always look very smart, doesn't it, when it's all neatly finished. So that's one sleeve in. Let's have a look, make sure it's all okay. There's no gathery bits or tucks or anything. That looks perfect. So let's do the other one next. So we're nearly there now, folks. We've got 2 sleeves in. We've got the yoke, we've got the elastics. We just need to hem these sleeves. I'm going to overlock mine and just turn them up a small amount. You can do a turn and turn if you prefer. There's about a centimetre seam allowance. And the same for the hem. I'm just going to overlock it and turn it up the centimetre and leave it at that. A nice simple easy hem for a very light floaty dress. That was one sleeve, second sleeve, and then whiz round your hem. So here we go. That's nice and stitched. Just a nice simple finish there. And a nice simple hem on the dress. Give it a final press. And there you go. You've got your yoke, you've got your sleeves, you've got your gathers, your elastics and your hem. So what you should have should look a little bit like this. Enjoy.